So I am being very bold to claim innovation, but I think actually I'll be describing certain things that are happening in pretty much all classrooms post-COVID. And this is particularly, I think we're all sharing a certain condition of decreased sort of motivation to do the business the way we've done it. And for that reason, I call it reading digital cultures. But in a way, yeah, this is sort of the way that, we've always hoped that, students will have multi sort of literacies across modes. So to keep it sort of very sort of in context, I speak, from an Indian sort of location, but I think this is happening, across the world, where several adaptations have happened across media. And we have seen, for instance, the novel Sacred Games turn into a Netflix series. We've seen people discover poetry through Instagram. We're seeing in the Indian context a lot of audio, visual, multilingual, multimodal stuff happening. When this famous movie Gully Boy sort of was released a few years ago, influences were cited from, American rap culture, and yet, the rappers featured, speak in Hindi and Marathi and Gujarati and such. So clearly, in the moment we are today, when I'm sort of teaching in an Indian liberal arts classroom, it is multilingual, it is multimodal, and it is certainly polyvocal. And to sort of deny those facts, I think would be foolish. And I know in humanities sort of traditions, oftentimes our job is to take very seriously the text, but clearly the text has also changed. So we find ourselves at this digital crossing. And so that begs the next question of sort of, how do we do things differently? And why do we do things the way we have? So clearly, one thing we saw during the pandemic, and some of my students you'll hear from sort of also reference this, was that the world kind of closed down, but it opened up on our screens. And that means the ways in which people could engage each other, could engage digital collections and museums, all of that, the barriers that had thus far existed changed. So in a sense, the frames in which we make meaning also changed with that. To give a sort of a broader sweep of what's going on, there is obviously a huge digital population in India, even if we do have a digital divide. There is an increasing amount of regional content that's beginning to appear. So what we see is less than 1% of the internet's language is, anything to do with India. I mean, Hindi and any other, but that is clearly changing. In the meantime, we also have the rise of other digitized efforts, which are coming from all kinds of spaces that offer many repositories and many objects for students to also engage with. So in many ways, what we call Web 3.0 is moving even beyond the participatory to the creative, where whether it's generative AI or other ways in which people are talking back to things, the platforms are making that possible. And I think the classroom is becoming just another platform in some way. So to give you a sense of the sort of not so long history, honestly, of digitization of all kinds of cultural artifacts, an example would be the digitization project that happened at the National Museum in India in conjunction with another one in Calcutta and another one in London. And over that time period, they generated over 100,000 digitized objects, which were company paintings. To give you context, the National Museum, which is the Smithsonian equivalent in New Delhi, has over 200,000 digital objects, which span 5,000 years. And we've seen, in addition to very official institutionalized sort of creations, also annotations and streaming platforms, which are trying to sort of, without violating copyright, put out there curated lists of different topics. So in some sense, the content generated is, pretty profuse. And I know that in the sort of lexicon, that is commonly spoken of in the university, a lot of this would be called digital humanities work. And it comes from the digitalization of life and of artistic practices. And all of it together creates essentially a parallel public sphere to the university. In so doing, it's also creating a new kind of you could call it classroom, community, audience, whichever way you choose to call it. But essentially, there is an expansion of public access. And once that's happened, to sort of restrict oneself to the text or the classroom text or even the classroom as the endpoint of that boundary of learning would just be foolish. So clearly, when we ask the question in India, where is digital humanities? It's not actually in the university. And there are a variety of reasons for that, which I won't get into. But in any case, there is something that's very exciting that's going on, given all of that. Now, in addition to the digitization and such of things, we are also looking at a new form of engagement, which is happening, of course, through a different form of pattern recognition, if you will. And this is through the creation of, machine learning sort of skills, augmented reality, and the same National Museum miniature collection I spoke of is going one level up with all kinds of other sort of ways to show off the collection. So considering that, we really need to ask the question of sort of where are our sort of students' minds at? Where is their mind space? And it's not just in the classroom, it's across everything in terms of social media, the internet, and all of that. In Indian terms, of course, the numbers are always staggering because of scale, but the fact is that it's also the world's cheapest data. So even though, yes, we hear a lot about the digital divide, the kind of the scale up of that access is happening in real time, and it's very, very significant actually. So that being said, I'm going to show you a bit of a clip, a few clips from this very short film, where students who are not necessarily feeling the love for reading, about digital cultures, but were already immersed in those digital cultures, were talking about the things that they were encountering as things they're interested in. And those included, of course, games, video games, but also really Google Arts and Culture was a huge sort of ghost presence in our classroom. And the fact also is that some of these games deal with historical content, and often it's the first way in which they encounter cities and even history in that sense. So I hope that this video works, and I will try to make it work if it doesn't. All right. So I'm just going to begin at the beginning, and I will sort of quickly roll past as things move. I hope it works. One second. Yeah.
If you were to visualize the term experiential art, you may imagine an art gallery or a museum, a physical and tangible realm. But what about art expression for the inaccessible? As universal victims of the COVID outbreak, we're all familiar with digital alternatives. But have you considered the place of art in a digitally evolving world? That's what we look into during the course of this video. Tracing a timeline from 2010 to 2015, we pinpointed 3 relevant checkpoints in digital art culture through immersive gameplay. The first platform we'll be looking into is called Kill Screen, which is essentially a space for collaborative expression of digital artists who promote their work through interactive gameplay from all around the world. Launched in 2010, Kill Screen allows its users to witness first-hand accounts of each artist's work via their stories section. One such intriguing story is that of Will Robertson and Alfredo Salazar Caro's take on transcending the confines of a museum, discoveries into the exhibition. The art, to have an entire universe created around it, makes the experience as a whole feel like completely being immersed in art.
While huge companies produce games that all look the same, a few indie developers like Dhruv Jani and Sushant Chakrabarti of Studio Oleomingus are establishing a claim for video games as a form of art. Based in Chawla, India, Studio Oleomingus is a tiny independent game and art studio established in 2014. They work at the nexus of interactive fiction and post-colonial writing, and they use gaming spaces as forums for discussion, resistance, and documentation. Through the medium of video games, the creators hope to tell stories from underrepresented groups. Studio Oleomingus describes itself as a studio for collaborative game and art projects. In the virtual worlds they create, they have original architectural works of art. Their game worlds are littered with an architecture of repurposed objects. In their game, The Indifferent Wonder of Edible Places, we see an exploration of the violence of completeness. When investigated, it is a repository that comes and goes, simulating the challenging process of drawing meaning from the worn-out remains of time. In its single-player form, the narrative revolves around a tower at the outskirts of an unidentified town that is being devoured by a creature that eats municipal buildings. It contemplates the violence of erasure and the terrible pain of having to survive on the periphery of history, while sites of interwoven and inclusive records are being erased. A year after Studio Oleomingus,
in March 2015, YouTube launched support for publishing and viewing 360-degree videos. 360 degree videos are video recordings where a view in every direction is recorded at the same time, shot using an omnidirectional camera or a collection of cameras. Further, the Indian form of interaction with art and storytelling has already taken place. For example, Google Arts and Culture, a part of the Google Cultural Institute, teamed up with numerous museums and galleries across the world, allowing users to be able to take walking tours of popular museums and landmarks. Once inside, users can click through the museum to explore various rooms. Further, the Indian Institute of Technology Jodhpur iHub Drishti is working on building two augmented reality and virtual reality platforms for the Archaeological Survey of India and the Rajasthan government. In April,
Sorry, I didn't want you to sort of watch too much of it, but this is a sample of sorts where I think what I was trying to demonstrate really was the power of these tools for students to kind of experience firsthand, oftentimes in their own minds, objects of their choosing. And the access to primary sources has really radically changed with, all these different windows into collections and sources, historical sources specifically. So that being said, I think the title of this talk was hopefully not particularly misleading in the sense that it is meant for the understanding what the idea of sampling really looks like. And the sampling is both of primary sources which are out there in the digital world, but also in a sense, students are sampling to generate these video essays. And by not mandating the text as the only source of information that would give them the ability to sort of understand better, but by really having them create their own context and generate their own video essays where they're narrating what they're seeing and describing and collecting and annotating in digital terms. I think humanities practices for the 21st century would be on point to kind of speak, in a sense, the language of students, to keep them engaged, to keep them motivated. I don't know if it's innovative or not, but I think the video essay has been a big win in terms of my own classroom teaching. And considering I'm teaching things like digital cultures, it would be kind of foolish for me to rely solely on text. So that's me for now. Thank you.
So you said that you would consider these big wins, and certainly they look like pretty impressive essays. Can you talk about how you're assessing them? How are you evaluating them as wins?
Yeah, no, I think one, of course, is that students tend to aggregate into themes of their own interest. So that really matters, in terms of keeping the motivation up. In terms of grading, for instance, there's a lot of peer review, and that is integral to work ethic and making sure that nobody's slacking off, in the name of group work. And that's often a big complaint with group work. So to sort of say you're grading yourselves, and there's an external jury that came in to grade these video essays. So this sense that I'm sort of more the coach or the mentor rather than the person assessing them went far, I think, in kind of producing work of quality. They saw each other's rushes. There were about 6 groups in the class. And one group, for instance, picked things like dating apps, right? And the way that, again, platforms, do certain things in terms of bias. And so they were very personal, very confessional. And I did say, be careful. I'm not sure you want to put that stuff, on any form of video, even if you think it's riveting. Some groups did complete role play, which was a good way of deflecting from making it too, personalized. But I think there was an appreciation for different narrative styles, which is what we want to pay attention to in the humanities, form and such. And there was also a lot of joy, actually, in seeing people find their voice for other groups. So there was a lot of cheering on. And because, motivation has been down, it's hard to keep the kind of the vim up. It was good to have them cheer each other on and kind of be gently nudging along the way. So that's, I think, the way that both the assessment and the challenge of the assignment worked for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Maya, I was wondering if the students are coming to the project with all of the expertise or the skills, the ability with the tools that they need already, or is that something you spend quite a bit of time training them in? Very
little time, in fact. I know that we're not supposed to call them, digital natives, and that word has been sort of really canceled out in terms of this. But I think finding the right tool, like for instance, one of the groups was doing a history of queer cinema in India. and they were using a lot of screenshots from different films and such, YouTube and whatever else. And they just found the easiest thing to stitch this stuff together. Nobody's a film major, honestly. This is just early sophomore sort of level. But I realized that the tech is always the last challenge. And it's more kind of getting people to work together, which I feel like after the pandemic, it's been difficult, to have that engagement, just other connection happen between people. So if anything, if there's a relevance to the university in the future, I think it's because it'll be a space of human connection. And for those reasons, such assignments, I feel, bring that into play. So yeah, thanks, David.